Statseeker alerts can be triggered in response to the content of either a syslog or SNMP trap message that has been forwarded to the Statseeker server, or to the creation of an event record. And event records cover device up-down state changes, interface offer status changes, and threshold breaches. The alert that Statseeker generates can be a syslog message that the Statseeker server sends on to whatever collector you define, an email which can be sent to a specified Statseeker user or all users in a defined Statseeker group, or an email address to target non-Statseeker users and email-driven ticketing systems. The other action which can occur as an alert outcome is for Statseeker to run a specified shell script, allowing Statseeker's alerting functionality to accomplish any multi-step complex task or to integrate into a third-party product or service in use within your organization. Alright, so let's look at configuring alerts. We head to the admin tool, alerting and event management, alerting, and add a new alert. The first option we have here is the alert template. From what we saw earlier, this is the output of the alert. What type of alert do you want to configure? Do you want to send an email, forward a syslog message, or run a script? We'll start with a simple email template. Name your alert. The status is simply, is the alert enabled? You can disable an alert but maintain the configuration for later use. Also, if you're halfway through an alert configuration and have to move on to another task, disable the alert before you save it, otherwise it'll be in play and sending alerts based on your partial configuration. The event type is the input for the alert. What type of event is going to trigger the alert? We can see our standard triggers for device events, interface events, syslog and SNMP trap triggers, and the ability to use any of the threshold configurations specific to this server as a source for the alert. Let's start with a basic device down alert. Entity filter. I can leave the filter network-wide or select one of my Statseeker groups. We're looking for a device event, so I've also got the option to select an individual device. The basic email template is just that. It's pretty basic, so if you want to apply the alert to more than one device, you're going to have to drop them into a group and use the group filter. Next we have a time filter. Again, I can leave it open 24/7 or restrict the alert to events that occur within a specified time range. We have the custom option here, which allows me to configure a basic time range and the option to head off to the advanced time filter editor to create and test a complex time filter. Use this if you want to include multiple ranges and exclusions in your time filter. There's doco and video around for doing each of these things if you aren't familiar with the advanced time filter editor. Once you add a custom time filter, that time filter is added to the list for use in subsequent alerts. The time filter mode comes into play once you've specified your time filter. In this case, if a device went down prior to the alerting period and was still down at the start of that period, do you want to ignore it or do you want to be notified that it's still down? The time zone we see here applies to your time filter. If you have a remote office and you want to restrict the alerts to the business hours of that office, you can simply drop the business hours and set the time zone. No need to calculate the time difference. The logging option can be enabled when troubleshooting alerting issues. Alerting always logs out to Statseeker messages log, but when this option is enabled, we expand on that default level of logging, and it can be a little noisy, so it's off by default. Bundling allows you to bundle up individual alert messages and then send them together. This might be useful when a device goes down and you lose connectivity to everything behind it. Stop you being bombarded with individual alert messages. Although a better option in that case might be to use the advanced email template and enable upstream device configuration, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. And the last option is who do you want to email? Drop in an email address, select a Statseeker user or a group of users. I can use the check event filters to apply the config to the content of the events database and see if any recent events satisfy the alert conditions. This is really useful if you're creating an alert in response to behavior you know to be occurring, and more so when you have multiple or complex filter conditions. You can ensure that you're targeting the right events and only those events. We also have the aptly named preview test email option, which allows you to preview a test email. It grabs the most recent entry in the events database that will satisfy this alerting config and previews the email that would be sent if the event occurred once this alert was in play. And we've also got the option to actually send a test email alert, and this can be used to confirm that your Statseeker email server configuration is working as intended. If you need to update something there, Admin Tool, Statseeker Administration, Email Configuration. You can review and edit and test your email server config here and see the current mail queue. So, when you're happy with your alert config, save it. The custom content template allows you to customize your email content using text and event-related shortcodes. The options available here depend on the event type specified in the alert configuration. Here we've got a ping down alert, so we have access to a general event content, and the triggering entity is a device, so device-related content. Mouse over one of the shortcodes here to see the description of the code, and just simply click to add the codes where you need them. This is where the preview test email option becomes very helpful. You can customize the email, test, and save when you're getting what you want. When you have bundling enabled, a different set of shortcodes are available for the email subject, allowing you to drop in some summary detail around the event type. I'll just add in some dividing space between records in the email body so we have a better layout for multiple records. And increase my bundle time so I can catch a few records and preview the email content. The advanced email template expands on this, including some really nice features. We now have multiple filter blocks. There's a logical OR in place here. If any of these filter blocks is satisfied, the alert is generated, allowing multiple triggers within a single alert configuration. The bundling options have been expanded. We now have bundle types. Let's say that this alert was to target non-critical infrastructure. I'll change the name. Filter to a different group of devices and set the bundle from the end of business hours through to 6 a.m. on the next business day. So each morning I get a single email detailing all of the down events for these devices since the end of business the previous day, and all down events which occur over the weekend are bundled up for me for first thing on Monday morning. The waiting option addresses a very specific use case when you've got multiple triggers, one of which is a down event, and you've got bundling rules in play. Specify an alternate action to take with regard to the bundling for the down events. Onto upstream devices. This uses defined network topography to suppress alerts for downstream devices when the defined upstream device is unreachable. With this feature enabled, if a firewall for a remote office falls over, you only get the alert for the firewall rather than for the firewall, and also alerts for every device behind it, which is also now unreachable. There's a 2-minute video which provides an overview of the upstream devices feature and configuration, and there's doco which goes into detail. Check them out if you're interested in using the feature. The next addition in the advanced template is the recipient roster. Upload a text file containing your roster, and emails for this alert will be sent to recipients according to that roster. Syntax for the roster file is detailed in the doco, docs.statseeker.com, alerting and threshold config, alerting, and down in working with the advanced template. Date time syntax, row syntax, and an example. Next, we've got date time formats to use in the email, and these are applied in any instance of the event time shortcode. And event format allows you to customize the content of the short text shortcode. Again, the syntax to use is presented in the doco. And last of all, we've got some formatting options for use with various email clients. The other alert template options are Syslog and Script. So Syslog. We have the same multiple filter blocks from the advanced email template. Just drop in the IP of the target Syslog collector and your message format. We've got the old school Statseeker Syslog format and a flexible JSON format. The JSON format contains all of the data from the Statseeker message and offers some additional configuration data for the message source device. The script template, drop in the command to run your shell script, including any operational parameters required. The script will be run as the server's Statseeker user account, so be sure to set appropriate file permissions for access and execution of that script. So, we've had a look at the various alerting templates and how to configure filters for them. The last thing I want to look at is some of the variations in the alert trigger that we skipped over on our way through to the templates. I'll just use this script configuration. Now, in our event types, under Syslog, we have a single option here, custom. You can also see that all of the trigger types have this custom option. Selecting it, we get a regex field where we can drop in a filter. I'll drop in a group filter and check my filter against recent events. And save the alert. Now, if I create a new alert and look in the event type list, I can see that we now have the content of that regex filter there as a selectable trigger. These custom entries remain in the list as long as there's an alert configuration which uses them. Delete the last alert referencing that trigger, and the trigger is removed from your list. The SNMP trap trigger is the same configuration options as we just saw looking at Syslog. And when configuring alerts for breaches of your custom thresholds, you simply select the threshold and apply any additional features you might want. Now remember, the filters you define in the alert will be in addition to the filters that are applied in the threshold. But you can always check event filters to ensure that you have the filters configured correctly. And that's a basic run through alert configuration in Statseeker.